Well, hello everyone. Welcome back to Adrian's Digital Basement 2. Today's video, we're going to be taking a follow-up look at this Atari 1200 XL. I recently looked at this computer on the second channel where I tested out all the Ataris that I had in the house, and I found that, well, I think two were broken, and this one was flaky. So I want to take a look at what exactly is flaky about this, which I suspect is just a bad DIN jack or bad solder joints on the DIN jack. It appears that this thing has been modified to add Luma Chroma or S-Video type output on the DIN jack, because originally the person who gave this to me said it didn't work, and it didn't work because they only tried a composite video cable, and of course you got no video with the mod that someone's done on this. But besides the video problem we're having on this, with the power cord stuck in there, there is a toggle switch on the back, and people were interested to see what exactly the toggle switch did, because it didn't seem to do anything when I flipped it. And the other thing about this machine, it's definitely been modified where the ROMs have been swapped out, because this thing has built-in BASIC, while the normal 1200 XL does not. My other 1200 XL, when you first turn it on and you don't have a cartridge installed, like a BASIC cartridge or any other game, what you get is an Atari logo with rainbow animations happening on it. So that seems to be removed from this, and I heard that it was pretty typical for people to swap the 800 XL ROMs into the 1200 XL, because believe it or not, this machine is actually older than the 800 XL, and that gave this thing built-in BASIC and potentially a little bit more compatibility. Now I have to add the caveat that when it comes to 8-bit Atari machines, I'm still learning. I don't know a lot about these machines because they never really break, so I haven't done a lot of repairs, unlike on the Commodore 64 where I fixed so many of them. I know so many of the insides and outs of that machine. And while I have another 1200, I don't think I've even opened it up, so I've never even looked inside of this machine. Now, right off the bat, I gotta say I still do really like the 1200. It's got the look of the 800 XL and the 600 XL, but it's a lot bigger, a lot more junk in the trunk, so to speak. But then it has this really nice feeling keyboard, and instead of the buttons being along the edge of the keyboard here, they're along the top, but it has additional function keys. Don't know if anything actually uses those. Plus we have an L1, L2 LEDs. Maybe those are to do with bank switching. A power LED, reset, I mean, all the usual stuff. The other thing that's really nice about this keyboard is that instead of having the break key right there where you might push backspace, it's got a double wide delete or backspace key, which is pretty nice. Still though, the return key is up on the QWERTY row, which is not very intuitive when you're using it, because your pinky kind of falls to that button, which on this machine is the caps lock key. So the layout of this keyboard is a little bit different than on the old 400/800 and on the newer machines. So people who are really used to those, if they upgrade to this, they probably go like, I'm having a struggle here. In fact, I think there's like an Atari key that's normally in this position. Oh, I see, it's this button right there. It's a little, it's hard to see there. There we go, that one. I think that's normally down here near the shift key. Either way, this feel of this keyboard is really nice. I love the shiny keys. It's sort of reminiscent of the 800 keyboard. And yeah, overall, this seems like a nicely built machine. Doesn't feel chintzy or crappy at all. And it's pretty sturdy. So I'm assuming there's a bunch of RF shielding in there that's giving it extra weight. And I'm noticing that this is serial number 7430. And there's a date of 1/18, so January 18th, 1985. Not sure if that's a surname of the person who owned this machine previously. Okay, all the screws are removed. Let's see how this comes apart. Looks like their keyboard's got, oh no, it's one of these cheap ribbon cables. Okay, so the buttons or maybe the LEDs have a normal ribbon cable. But this kind I don't like at all, although it's pretty easy to disconnect. It actually has a really nice connector. And the shielding is gone. It's been removed. So the weight on this machine is, it's not due to the shielding. It's just the plastic and everything else. So the keyboard's got a couple ICs and a couple capacitors on it. That's unusual. I haven't seen that on any of the other Atari keyboards. Mitsumi, so same manufacturer as a lot of the Commodore 64 keyboards. But from a feel perspective, you know what, now I think about it, that really does feel a lot like the Mitsumi Commodore 64 keyboard. So it's quite possible that there are springs under each one of these keys, and then there's a little rubber thing that pushes on the PCB, carbon impregnated rubber piece, and there are some traces on the PCB that you can access if you take all the screws off. So actually servicing these are really easy. So you just take all the screws out, PCB comes out, you don't have to take any of the keys off, and then you can carefully clean out any dust or anything else that has gotten onto the PCB. And usually with a little IPA, a little bit of cleaning of the dust, you can get these keyboards working perfectly again. And even more so, if you have keys that are really not working well, you can, oh, I don't know if the slider is compatible with a Commodore 64 slider. It's actually possible that it is. You gotta take the PCB off and the keycap off, and then you can get the slider out. But even if they're not compatible and you can't really find replacement sliders that have the rubber bits on the bottom, what you could do is get that remote control repair paint that onto the little contacts. It's also conductive, I suppose, and then fixes it. You know, in fact, before we dig into the rest of the machine here, and I am seeing some mods on there, I see some flying wires or whatever. I actually want to investigate this a little bit further. Let's see if this is compatible with the Commodore 64 keyboards, because that would be awesome for people who have these that break and they need replacement parts. Okay, so there is a spring under there, just like on the 64, and double shot keycap, very nice, high quality. There is the slider. I think I have some 64 keys sitting right around here. I went and grabbed a VIC-20. Let's steal a key off this, see if it's gonna fit onto the Atari keyboard. So the springs are different. This is the Commodore spring, but the keycap, on the other hand, that looks very similar when it comes to construction style. Pretty sure that that cross point is gonna be the same. So obviously this is the Atari key in my left hand. Let's see what happens if I try to put this Commodore key on there. Yeah, that totally works. So that kind of implies the slider is probably compatible. And I suppose if you have a broken or missing key on your Atari 1200, I mean, you could use a Commodore 64 key. They're very abundant and plentiful. I think most people have spare or parts keyboards. And just so you can see how the slider looks on the 64, it's very similar looking. Obviously, it's a different color plastic, but it feels the same when it comes to the way it's pushing when there's no spring installed there. So today I learned the 1200, or at least this 1200, has a Mitsumi keyboard that is very similar to the Commodore 64 keyboard. Pretty cool, very serviceable, and easy to find replacement parts for. If you know a lot about these 1200s, are there other keyboards that Atari used besides the Mitsumi one, or were they all sporting this keyboard? I know there weren't really a whole ton of these machines made. They're relatively rare. All right, well, a couple things. Looking at the bottom of the case, it looks like these standoffs have actually been broken and glued back together at some point. So previous owner, wonder what happened there. These ones also look like they have been glued as well. Looks like it was cracking and they put some kind of glue or epoxy. They did a pretty good job because the machine's not squeaky or anything. And you can see the plastic has a lot of ribbing here, so it is pretty sturdy, very solid feeling. All right, here's the main attraction. Here's the 1200, and well, there's lots to look at here. First thing I want to point out is I love the angled joystick ports on the 1200. So when you plug your joystick in, it sticks out of the case this way. So a really nice touch by Atari. Now, while you think that maybe I did this writing on here, it was not me. So the Pokey, the OS ROM, the basic ROM, CPU, which I kind of have to wonder if that's a Sally or is that a regular 6502. I happen to have this big Atari parts list here. Very helpful for looking up these chips. So we're looking for CO14806. 806 Sally, yes, okay, so that is a Sally CPU. That means you cannot just put in a regular 6502 unless you get some kind of adapter. I think people will come up with some adapters that add some extra logic chips to it that allow you to use a 6502. This computer has 64 kilobytes of RAM. It's MOSTEC RAM. Someone put dots on all of it. Don't know if it was tested. In fact, there's dots on all of these ICs. That's interesting. I wonder if this thing has been through a bunch of repair work in the past. We have a GTIA, and it is the 14805 version -01. Then for the Antic, it's a 21697, which is one of these later ones. Antic E. So as the numbers go up, these are later chips, obviously. And like there's an Antic B for PAL machines, but this is the NTSC version, Antic E. There is another Antic with a lower number. Where is it? 12296. There's another, the older Antic. Don't know what the difference is. I assume there is some slight difference, but this has got the later Antic. We have an IC from MMI, and it doesn't have markings that I recognize. It says CO61618. It looks like 61618 MMU. Right, so I didn't know that MMI, which normally makes PAL chips, made the MMU for Atari, at least on some of the machines. This is probably the same chip that goes into the Atari 800XL. Especially because on that parts list, it only listed one MMU. So it probably is compatible with those other machines. Now the parts list I just looked at doesn't contain any of the ROMs, so we can't look up these part numbers, but my assumption is these are the ROMs directly from the 800XL. And it looks like we have a little bit of modification going on. So we have 2 flying leads with these pins bent out of the basic ROM, one over to W7 and one over to C11 facing the back of the machine. I had mentioned in my testing video for this machine that the color graphics looked off, the colors that is, and it's this potentiometer right here that you can adjust to fix that color phase problem that this was experiencing. Now, one thing that's different about this machine versus the 800XL is this actually does have a voltage regulator and takes AC voltage in, even though it's not really necessary, but that was just something that the 400s and 800s did because those needed negative voltage rails for the RAM. This thing does not. So Atari retained this brick style AC power supply, and that's the input on the back. And then you need this large heatsink, and it's pretty elegantly designed, I have to admit. So it emits the heat right from those vents. Here's a funny little tidbit. They had to notch the heatsink because it was too close to that capacitor C47. Pretty hilarious. This massive chonker package here is the bridge rectifier. I don't know why they use such a huge one. It's not like this computer uses up that much power, but that's pretty amusing. As for the small toggle switch, there are 2 wires and they make their way over to there. What the heck is happening? Let's zoom in on this. Right, okay, well, the orange wire goes to those 2 resistors. Looks like it was lifted out of the board. I assume there was maybe 2 originally, or maybe just 1. Hard to know if that's a factory bodge, but whatever this mod does, lifts those resistors out and lets you selectively select or deselect them. R24. All right, so I did a quick Google search for Atari 1200XL mod R24, and we got the ClearPick mod by Bob Woolley. A simple yet effective display upgrade for a fuzzy 1200XL. Below are the details for both. So a bunch of components get changed out. R63 gets changed to 1 ohm, L15 to a 1 ohm resistor from an inductor, removing a capacitor. So that would be removing some of the filtering, almost certainly. Adding some 75 ohm resistors, probably the termination was wrong or something. R24, there it is, 130 ohms. Leave blank. Wow, quite a lot of things. Add a wire from the junction of R27 and C61 to J5-2, the empty pin on the video DIN connector. And then there is a revised mod that has some more removals and replacements, I suppose. So I don't think the mod we're looking at here has anything to do with this mod that's going on. In fact, there's that resistor that's lifted and run through this wire. And on this picture here, it doesn't even show that removed at all or lifted at all. There were some other posts about video cleanup, but nothing really that talked about this exact mod. Here's a post about the cool boot up on the 1200XL. It says here, originally the 400-800 would boot to memo pad, but the 1200XL will boot to the rainbow scrolling Fuji symbol if no cartridge was installed, or the option key was not held down to put you in diagnostic mode. 600-800XL will boot to basic or diagnostic if the option key was held down, and the XCs would do the same. The 1200XL attract mode, as I guess it would be the best way to describe it, was pretty but useless. And while the notepad on the 400-800 wasn't capable of being saved or printed, I remember many a day when I needed to take a quick note of a telephone number or message and had no pen and paper handy, so a quick flick of the switch and I was typing away. That was a real neat feature. All right, so that pretty much confirms that this machine has been modified, and we can see that the ROM itself says BAS on it, so we know it's the basic ROM. The fact is there are 2 extra bodge wires on that basic ROM, which kind of leads me to believe that this ROM, which probably contained that Atari splash screen, maybe was a 4K ROM originally. In fact, the footprint on here looks like it can accommodate 28 pins, but they probably had to do a little bit of rewiring to make it accommodate the regular 8K basic ROM, which is a 2364. While the OS ROM on these machines is the equivalent of a 27128 EPROM or a 23128, which means it's a 16K ROM. But it does look like they had a provision on the motherboard to accommodate a 16K ROM instead of this 8K basic ROM. Now, it looks like there's some writing on here, but I think that was just from the ribbon cable that this was torn off from. This looked like it came from a multi-pin ribbon cable, and someone just peeled off just these 2 wires. So that's all that is. All right, well, the biggest problem with this machine is there's something wrong with the DIN jack. Either the DIN jack is bad or more likely it has broken solder joints on the bottom. So I'm gonna have to get this motherboard out so we can take a closer look and inspect for damage. Plus, we might be able to see any mods that have been done on the bottom side to enable the S video and disable the composite video. The funny thing about the mod that's done on here is that you could at least send the Luma signal to the old composite pin. You don't have to leave the composite pin completely disconnected. And that way, if anyone in the future ever plugged in regular composite video cable, they would still get a black and white image. It's just the way it is now, you get nothing. And that's what led the person who gave this to me to think the computer was actually faulty. Okay, I'm not familiar how to get this motherboard out. This whole section looks like it comes off. There we go. Okay, that freed up pretty easily. And now this probably lifts out, but we have the problem of this attached cable here. So I guess I could take the nut off the switch, or I'll just be careful and flip this over carefully without ripping that off. Oh, we have an RF shield. Okay, well, let's get that off. And yeah, I can see quite a bit of bodging happening there on the DIN jack. That would explain why the video is not working properly. You know, since the top one is missing, I don't know why the bottom one was reinstalled. Doesn't really do anything if you don't have both sides installed. Okay, I think all the nuts have been removed. Yep, the shield is left behind. There it is. Goodbye. Now we can flip this over and, ooh, okay. Got some bodge-tasticness happening here. These are the ROMs. I'm just making sure. Yep, those are the two ROMs. So we obviously have additional wiring that's needed besides those two bodge wires on the top side. So we required a little bit of extra bodging on the bottom. Let's see what this chip is. I think that would be the CPU, I would imagine. Sally? Actually, no, that's the PIA. Now, on the 800XL, well, I think everything after the 400 and 800, there are extra lines on here that are used instead of for the 4 controller ports. It uses some extra signals to do RAM banking for the 64 kilobytes and maybe ROM banking as well. And that might be what's happening with the basic ROM, as I think it's being bank switched in from the PIA. And the other chip that looks like it's bodged in is the LS138. And I know this is used for chip selects on the 800XL, so I bet you there's an additional chip select line that's running over to there. Okay. Actually, no, I'm sorry, that's not the case. This bodge wire that goes over near the ROMs is actually hooked up to this IC on that trace, and then the PIA goes to this chip. Let's see which one that is. Oh, it goes to the MMU itself. Okay, so the MMU is in play for bank switching the ROMs. Now, luckily, whoever did these bodges, the 2 on the top and the 2 on the bottom, those look fine. They look like they're applied without any issue. Now, when it comes to the S-Video mod, on the other hand, that is not quite so good. Looks like we have a resistor installed in line with the DIN jack, and I'm assuming we're going to have a cut trace, probably bringing the chroma signal over to the jack, because I think Luma's there already, but chroma is not. So I wouldn't be surprised if a mod has been done on this board somewhere. I'm looking for cut traces in this area. I'm seeing a lot of like rework done on random points, so I'm wondering if some of the components have been swapped out. There's a little resistor that's bodged in there. That might have been a factory thing. There's stuff that's hand soldered around, so I wonder if various components have been swapped out on this board. Oh, you know what? Before I do anything, let's power this thing back up again, just so you can see what it's doing when it comes to the flakiness of the DIN jack. So I have this cable here, which is hooked up through Luma Chroma, and audio is connected as well. So we'll just get this plugged in. Let's plug in the 9 volts DC. And if we turn on the machine, it just works. Well, that's funny. Well, let's see if it's, oh no, there we go. I can just touch it. Then it goes in and out. And I know this cable's not the problem because I was using this on other Ataris and there's no problem at all. And we seem to be missing the chroma entirely. Why? What's happening there? I know that works. I'm going to grab another Atari that has working Luma Chroma because I would want to see that my cable setup actually works. Okay, I have my 800 out. Okay, this is the RetroTink being stupid as usual. Let's just power cycle it. Oh, RetroTink. It's got some like auto gain stuff that you can't turn off, and it does that randomly on retro computers especially. It just acts weird. Okay, well, we have no color, so we obviously have an issue. Okay, I think this cable I'm using is bad. All right, I think the cable I'm using for chroma is bad. Let's swap that out, and I'm gonna throw this cable away. Okay, new RCA cable. Now we're having no issues. It looks a little bit bright, but I think that's a RetroTink problem again, but look how sharp this looks. The Atari 800 has really good video quality, and you don't have to mod it to get the Luma Chroma. It just works right out of the box. That looks awesome. It's super sharp, no vertical lines. It seems Atari took a big step down in the video output quality when all the later machines came out. Like, I'm not sure any of them are as good as this right out of the box. Right, we're back on the Atari 1200. And yeah, it's super flaky. Super duper flaky here. It's very purple as well. Let's turn the potentiometer here. I think that's closer to how it should look. Yeah, I think that is. Now what's funny is like, look how there's lines there now. And when I push down on the jack, they mostly go away, although we got some like jail bars now happening, although it's gonna dim down as the auto gain stuff goes away. I mean, that looks pretty good actually. That looks really quite good, as long as I push down on it. But when I let go of it, it gets all bad. Now what I don't know about, is this just dirt in the DIN jack? Why don't we put some Deoxit in it? Now what's quite possible is there's nothing wrong with the DIN jack at all, and it's just dirty, so Deoxit. Can't really remember if I did that or not. The buzzing we're hearing, I think, is happening because there's like a bad ground. Oh no, it's still screwed up. It is bad still, and I'm assuming if I move the jack, like I'm moving physically the jack and it's going in and out. So I think yeah, we got a bad connection on the board. So I think what I'm gonna do is first I'm going to desolder this jack. I don't think I need to swap it. The jack itself is probably fine, but I bet you we have like a bad connection on these thin traces. So I just have to add some bodge wires to connect these pins to those pins, and we should probably improve the situation quite a bit. Yeah, this DIN jack is mangled, so to speak. It's in rough shape, very rough shape. Top side of the board doesn't have any traces. I assume that middle pin is ground, so you don't really have to worry too much about anything on the top side. All right, this needs a serious clean. This flux situation is bad. That's been sort of massacred. I'm starting to think that the DIN jack is more of the problem. So I'm just gonna swap the DIN jack out. Here's the replacement jack that I'm gonna use. Don't know if it's any good quality. You know, this might not be modern. Maybe this is old. Conicom. Anyone recognize that brand? It goes right on with no issues. I'm just gonna push down some blue tack onto it, hold it in place. Now you might be wondering, why would someone disable the composite output pin on here? That's because the circuit on here that combines the chroma luma together to create the composite video, if you try to hook up the chroma luma directly, you get some dot crawl in your chroma luma signal, which is undesirable. So it's not unheard of for people to just disable that combination circuit that makes the composite video entirely. That has the effect, though, of disabling the composite, which means your RF modulator no longer works either. Now on this machine, the hole for the chroma isn't even plated, so we just have to attach this wire directly onto the pin, and I'm just going to make sure it's actually hooked on. And I decided to route it the other direction to kind of follow this ground plane, because it's possible that the chroma information can leak into the luma information, and when that happens, you get kind of dot patterns as well. So I'll just put down some tape to hold the wire in place exactly where I want it to be, just sort of away from the other video signals. And I suppose the one thing we should do before I connect the luma signal, pin number 1, to pin number 4, the composite signal, which are right next to each other, we should definitely power this up and just make sure 100% that we're not getting any actual composite video signal from that pin. It could have been just a bad connection. In fact, now I think about it, I'm probably gonna Dremel these traces slightly just to make sure that they have a little bit of solder on them to bridge to the pin. So I'm just exposing some of the copper. Yeah, I just wanted to kind of glob on a little extra solder that goes to those traces that feed those pins. So let's plug this in. Oh yeah, that's a really firm connection now. There shouldn't be any bad contacts at that point. Let's turn it on. Ah, lines. We're getting lines, but also, oh, they fade away. They fade away. Okay. Yeah, and moving the jack around, no more bad connection at all. Right. Well, I happen to have the Commodore 64 cable, so we can plug this in and we can test to see if we're actually getting any composite video at all anymore. So it's this Luma connection. Oh, it works. So there was a bad connection under there. Let's just switch this over to composite video. Let's see if we're getting actual composite color. We are, so that works the whole time. Okay, so it was just a bad connection. What does the switch do, if anything? No way. I guess the switch turns the composite off and on. So it's a selectable S-Video mod, and I think the switch, it's disabling the chroma-luma combination that it goes to composite to get rid of the lines and the dot pattern that you see in the S-Video mode. Let me switch over to the other cable and let's check that out. So here's S-Video. Okay, so that's with the switch in the setting where the composite is enabled. Wow, do we really notice a difference? Let's unplug the chroma. So there's the chroma. I mean, there's no difference. So that's just the luma, and we would see those lines or whatever, and we're not seeing them. So let me plug the chroma back in. We're definitely looking at S-Video. What an interesting mod. What an interesting mod. Let's go back to composite. Okay, so this setting, well, wait, what's happening here? Oh, you know what? This switch is dodgy. The little toggle switch. So the switch in the position that faces that side of the computer, composite's enabled, composite disabled on this one. How interesting, how interesting. And actually, where's the composite? Yeah, I really feel this switch is bad. Yeah, look at that, it's bad. Just looking to see if we have a bad connection somewhere. I think it's the switch itself is the problem. I think for simplicity, I'm gonna remove this switch because it just, I don't know, it seems to be unreliable. Like, it's in the position facing that way, so we should be seeing composite. If I tap this switch, there, it started working. Well, since there didn't really appear to be any visible difference with the switch in the composite setting when we were looking at the Luma Chroma mode, I'm just gonna reattach these resistors back to where they're supposed to be. And that way in the future, someone doesn't think the composite's not working because this switch is dodgy. Just try it one more time. It should be showing us composite right now. And it's not. I'll poke the switch. Oh, yeah, okay. That switch, bad. So this might have been a period correct mod, but it's getting undone for reliability's sake. So I'm just gonna install a little metal wire into the hole. So this mod would be easy to put back in the future if someone wanted to. But I'm just gonna put this little metal wire, attach it to the resistors, snip off the excess, remove this little section of cable. And now when we turn this on and we have the composite cable connected, RetroTink doing its thing. If we just wait a little moment, there it is. The gain has settled and it looks fine. It absolutely looks fine. So let's swap over to the S-Video or Luma Chroma connector. I'll switch the input over to S-Video. I mean, that looks really good. I'm not seeing any bad artifacts. Looks awesome. So that's really it. This thing is now fully operational and has a new DIN jack, has that switch removed. I'm just gonna put it back together. All right, I just have the top loosely fitted. The motherboard's all screwed in though, and everything is reconnected. So it should boot into basic. It does. And the reason why I haven't put the top on is I want to do the color test with this cartridge. So I'm using my A8 Pico cart. Colors look a little unusual, but that might be just the way it is. So we go to Salt, CPS Super Salt. Let's try this one. See what it detects this thing as. Gosh, it looks really clear. Whoever did the video mod on this thing did a great job. I am hooked up through Luma Chroma right now. Break for menu, break. There it is. Select to move pointer. Menu option to change, okay. Individual tests, okay, individual tests, color bars. It went away after I wanted to stay there because I want to adjust that potentiometer. Yeah, that's not great. Let's get out of here. Not sure which one to try, so let's just try this one. It says 2.05. Okay, so this one gives errors, but that's fine, I think. Question mark for help. Gray bars, no. Color bars. Okay, I think this one stays on. I'm gonna lift the keyboard so I can access the potentiometer. The best of my knowledge, you see at the bottom right there, there's that green bar, the gray bar, and then the green bar. Well, at the top, We also have the gray bar and then that green bar. Well, it's like an off green. Well, what we want to do is adjust the potentiometer. I'm trying to get my finger in the right spot till this green bar is almost the same color as that one. So see if I turn it, well, if I turn it this way, so that's obviously not right. We're going to keep turning it the other way. There we go. I think that's what we want. I'm not sure if we want these to be the same color, these two bars, that one and that one, or if we want it to be, you know, a smooth gradation into it. But I'm going to set it to be the same color. So like about like that. Although now I think about it, maybe it should be like that, so it more smoothly goes into the next color. So it's not the same color like it is there, or it's not wildly off like it is there. I'm not sure. If anyone knows, comment down below, please, on the proper way to adjust this. Let's reboot the system and see how this looks now. Yeah, because my biggest problem is I don't know how these games are supposed to look color-wise on the Atari. Like, what is the correct color for any of these? Let's try Donkey Kong. That's sort of a game we all know. I guess that looks okay. Well, actually, what we can do is I'll just put in the actual Miss Pac-Man since I don't seem to have it on my multi-cart, so we can tell how this looks. All right, those colors look good. Nice and vibrant as well. Shouldn't that be a little bit more pink than it is there? So if I turn it a little bit more, now it looks a bit more pink. Although that other ghost is kind of a brown color now. Let's go back to the salt cartridge real quick, and I just want to look at what the gradation looks like now. So I'd say I turned it too far there. Should be more like that, if it's how I originally thought, where those bottom two bars should be the same. Now let's look at what Miss Pac-Man looks like. Okay, that looks good, nice and pink in the logo. I guess this is just how it looks. Okay, cherry is nice red color as well. That looks good. And if we boot the system into basic, let's look at how the tech screen looks. I think that's pretty much how it should look, I guess. Again, I'm just no expert in the Ataris. I bet you there's people watching who will know exactly how to adjust those color bars. So please comment down below. I'd really, really like to know so I can get all my NTSC Ataris all dialed in perfectly. But one thing we do know for sure is this machine works, because I already tested it previously, and now we don't have any issues with the DIN jack, and this thing has working composite, which means no issues there, so you can plug a Commodore cable into this and not get caught out, and obviously the switch on the back doesn't really do anything. And I've learned that this keyboard is a Mitsumi keyboard, so we don't need that post-it note anymore. And this computer has those mods on to allow those 800XL ROMs to work in here. And of course, it has some S-Video mod that's done really well and looks really clear and really good. And well, this thing is a survivor. Awesome. So putting these screws in, I know those standoffs are not in the best of shape, so I'm not going to put these in too tight because that would just stress them out. But also I'm going to go backwards till I hear a nice click and it falls into place. That way I'm not cutting new threads. So these screws go in nice and easy. And the final thing this computer is going to get is a sticker that just says that the switch is not connected. Just so someone knows when looking at the back, there it is, not to worry about the position of the switch. I left the switch in there because I didn't want to put a big hole in the case. Looks like there's already a small hole there next to it. For some reason, that's kind of odd. It's almost like when they started to drill the hole, they thought, oops, I need to move it over. Channel 2 and 3, by the way. Yes, that's right. But yeah, switch not connected. And this machine was someone's baby that they really loved, hence all those mods. And it's pretty awesome machine. Pretty awesome machine. So I'm really curious if anyone's watching who knows these machines. Are those mods that were done for the ROMs pretty typical? Is that pretty normal? And a lot of people did that with these. I heard some people in the comment section say sometimes people would do a mod where they had a switch that allowed you to switch between the original 1200 ROMs and the better 800 ROMs, 800XL ROMs that is. Although this person obviously felt that the 800XL ROMs were just better to have on all the time, and I think that's probably the right move, because honestly, most software that needs 64K, all the later stuff, all is pretty much designed with the 800XL in mind. So you might as well just make this thing 100% 800XL compatible, which it is, but with the better keyboard and the bigger, sturdier case and all the other benefits you get with this, and an excellent S-Video mod that's on this thing. Most excellent. It's funny, it's one of the things when reading about the S-Video mods for the 800s, there's so many out there. There's like no definitive guide that I ever found for doing the mods. Even when I just looked it up briefly, this one, there were like multiple revisions. Seems that people kept trying to improve it little by little. But there are some simple mods where you only change a few things, and there's some where you change a bunch of things, and then people say if you do it one way that it was the wrong way. So I'd love to know if there's a definitive guide for S-Video modding, the 800XL specifically, but also the 600XL and then the 1200, because my other one does not have the mod, and I would like to do the mod to it so I can get the better video quality like this one has. This one has excellent video quality. So if you enjoyed this little exploration video on the 1200XL and my little repair that I did on the video jack, then thumbs up would be appreciated. But if not, you know exactly what to do. On the side of the screen here are all the names of my supporters that make it possible I do this full time. So thank you very much to all of them. I really wouldn't be able to do it without their support. And thumbs up, the usual YouTube junk. And I guess that is going to be that. So stay healthy, stay safe, and I'll see you next time. Bye.